So how does Hamilton win the race? Well, there's two reasons, pace and strategy. And this graph will show a little bit of both then. So pace, first of all, Ferrari had a big upgrade package in Barcelona. Loads of aerodynamic surfaces were improved and they worked really well. So even if Hamilton was struggling through practice, Leclerc was showing some decent pace. And Lewis went away from the track, came back for qualifying and dialed in. Great pace, front row start. And then in the race, the pace looked every bit as strong, maybe even stronger. Here we go with the middle stint of Hamilton in the dotted red versus the two Mercedes. So the first stint is difficult to judge because Lewis started on the soft, the two Mercedes were on the medium. So even if the start wasn't then the advantage that Ferrari hoped for, the first stint comparison was probably always going to flatten Mercedes a little bit thereafter, even if the two compounds were fairly close. The soft was bound to go away. So Hamilton bolts in first for a set of mediums and does a very, very quick outlap down there and puts pressure on George Russell's lead. So Russell has to cover it the next lap. And then we get this high degradation second stint here with both cars and then Antonelli when he pits as well, all slowing down by a couple of seconds through the stint. So what does Hamilton do? He bolts again for the pits. A third stop, and this is the magic then, pitting in again and finding huge pace in the Ferrari. So he's finding sort of 2.5 seconds per lap on George Russell, who's struggling on a hard tyre with plenty of degradation, a little bit of understeer at this stage. He's going through that front left and he's struggling to rotate the car. On top of that, you've got Antonelli approaching the back of Russell. So he's got a two-pronged attack. On the one hand, Hamilton in a proxy war because Hamilton is now 23 seconds back, but charging with a new set of tyres. And you've got Antonelli on the track, who Russell has to take care of as well. But for Hamilton, it's just pure pace. This stint here is unbelievably fast for him on a new set of tyres. And he just knows at this point, you switch to a three-stop, you can just go pedal to the metal, use the tyres, use the grip, and you have to find the time, which he does. So really, really confident driving. Great teamwork with his race engineer now, which looks so settled for him. Back in a happy spot, and it's much better. So we get our first question of the show. Could the race have looked different if Kimi and George had followed the same strategy as Lewis? So we go back to our pace graph and see if George had pitted, could he have found a similar pace? Could he have held track position? Probably the answer is yes, if he'd pitted the same lap as Lewis. But Mercedes would have had to preempt that, which could have left George vulnerable to Kimi. And then also there's the threat of Lando Norris going for a two-stop if both Mercedes switched to a three. So again, Norris was another driver that they had to be careful of and was kind of acting as a second teammate to Lewis Hamilton, just keeping Mercedes on their toes on a two-stop. The problem Mercedes had was Hamilton's outlap pace was so fast and he was close enough that he was in range to undercut in just one lap on the outlap. So a response from Russell might not have been enough. This graph is fascinating here. So you got Hamilton before the stop, 2.8 seconds behind George Russell. That should be okay in a normal world, but the high deg nature of Barcelona, plus Russell really struggling on his hard tyres, meant that by the end of one lap, the gap was 23.4 seconds. So he'd pretty much eroded a 2.8 second advantage that Russell had, and it got very, very close to this green line here, which is where you can pit and come out ahead. So theoretically here, if Mercedes did the perfect pit stop, Russell maybe could have covered off Hamilton after the outlap, but it would have had to be nigh on perfect for Mercedes to do that, and they didn't risk it. They decided with Hamilton flying, he took 1.6 seconds in the middle sector alone out of that 2.8 second buffer on George. So when Mercedes saw that, they thought, okay, let's let Lewis do the three-stop, we'll cover off Lando on the two-stop, and we have to stick to our guns now. Ultimately, they actually did an amazing pit stop with George, and maybe they could have just covered that off, but it's a risk that you take because had they not got it right, Lewis still undercuts from that far back because he does such a fast outlap. Then they're stuck behind Hamilton. Then you have Norris maybe going long as well. Russell's then stuck in. Antonelli can do something different, and the world changes. So really, Hamilton's outlap kind of forced the issue for Mercedes. They couldn't really follow suit. And then you see once again, by the end of the next lap, the gap is absolutely nowhere near it. We're down to 20.8 seconds. So another huge chunk, 2.6 seconds is taken out. And those are the game-changing laps for Lewis Hamilton. So the next question is the bigger one. Could Lewis Hamilton have won without the VSC? The answer I thought was yes at the time, and the data backs that up. So here we go. What if no VSC for Hamilton? It then assumes that Antonelli is going to finish the race because he caused a VSC by retiring late on. But once again, you just see the pace difference that Hamilton had was just so fast compared to everyone on a two-stop that he was going to blitz them in that final stint. So the bit that we've just looked at was here. You've got Antonelli chasing Russell, much better pace for the second Mercedes. You've got Hamilton absolutely flying on this stint. So before the VSC came out, you then had the role reversed because the Mercedes pitted for fresh tyres. Hamilton stayed out, and you had this gap here between the Ferrari pace and the Mercedes pace. But that would have then gone back for the final stint once again towards Hamilton having the advantage. And he did so much of the work in the middle stint that he would have had the same situation again for the final run, a sort of 15-lap shootout to try and clear three cars, Norris and the two Mercedes, who were still line astern. And according to our simulations, it would have actually been fairly comfortable for Hamilton to come through. So it's a great shame that we didn't see that play out, actually, because you still would have had Hamilton's first win at Ferrari, but he would have had to do it in swashbuckling style, coming past Norris and fighting with Antonelli and Russell for the win. But surely, with the three-stopper and the pace that he showed, it was on the cards anyway for him. So the final thought here is, what happens if you don't have the two Mercedes fighting? Toto Wolff mentioned it after the race. Did the fighting between Kimi and George cost them? Did it allow Lewis to come out just ahead at the VSC? So let's have a look at what he's talking about. This is lap 33 on board with Kimi, staring at the back of George. George struggling on those hard tyres, Kimi with fresher tyres, so George covers the inside. Meanwhile, you've got Hamilton pumping in those fast laps. Russell comes through. He's way wide at the apex, carrying speed, trying to deter Kimi from making the pass. Kimi's then right over that curb, trying to get the run through for the magnificent turn 3 move, but he can't make it on his teammate. And they come through turn 3, and it's a non-pass here for Antonelli. Now, that is as close as these two got in that middle stint to slowing each other down. But as you play it through here, this is now Hamilton emerging from his pit stop after the VSC. They are racing up until that line here. So this is the safety car line. Whoever gets in front there holds position then under the safety car. It's the way of drivers that are pitting merging with drivers that haven't. And you can see it's actually fairly close between Hamilton and Russell and Antonelli. So you do wonder if Toto's right. Had Russell not had to cover the inside, had he not had to start defending and thinking about Kimi, would there have been a difference? But again, I think the answer is probably no in this situation. I don't think they slowed each other down by enough. As we play it through, it's actually 2 seconds difference, even if it looks a lot less, because Russell's going at a reduced speed. So you've got him coming through. It looked less, but George cannot go full tilt up to that line. So it's still 2 seconds. And on lap 33, the one where he defended on the inside, he lost about 7/10 of a second. Maybe there's another few tenths here or there from checking the mirrors and having to be preoccupied by Kimi's attack. But fundamentally, he's also still trying to push flat out to keep Kimi away from him. So in that instance, I don't think team orders to keep Kimi not attacking George will have made a difference with the VSC coming out. And I don't think it would have made a difference with the outcome that we saw had there not been a VSC as well. The only outcome that might have made a difference here was if Toto Wolff actually swapped the places. Because once again, if you look at the pace difference of Antonelli versus Russell, Kimi was a lot quicker in the race on Sunday. The dotted line is way below the solid line in Mercedes colours there. For the whole way through, he extended the first stint, got the reward and used it. Now, if here Mercedes make the bold call to get George out of the way for Kimi to go through, probably then Kimi has the pace to stay ahead at the VSC of Lewis Hamilton. Problem is, they're never going to do that. These two are title fighting. They are not giving up an inch, let alone a swap of positions at this stage. Russell needs it more than ever to beat Antonelli after a tricky run, and he was always going to fight it. So that was not going to be a case that Mercedes can do, and it was George's privilege. By taking pole position by 3/10, he had the track position, and that probably was the bigger cost for Mercedes, having the slower car in the front of the race. But it wasn't always the slower car at the front of their race. Antonelli does finally make the pass, lap 61. So you can see here he's now hunting down again in the final stint behind Russell, using that pace to pressurise his teammate. So Mercedes struggled with George on the hard tyre generally. In the middle stint, he had a little bit of understeer, requested more front wing. Mercedes accidentally added more than they were supposed to do. So he now has from slightly understeerier car to slightly oversteerier car. And you can see from Kimi's point of view here, just George fighting it slightly coming through turn 12 as he's missing the apex, a little wide, cannot get the car turned in properly because the rear is sliding. So if we take it back, look how much Antonelli gains through this corner as George is starting to lose those rears. Comes through, little wobble on the rear, and Kimi's got so much more grip at this stage. So we exit the corner, and now we're perfectly placed. Not really a mistake from Russell, but just a balance issue, a grip issue, and Antonelli's confidence as well through these final couple of corners is so stark. He mounts the curb through the penultimate corner. He's really neat through the last corner. And then we get the race moment between them. Now, this one surprised me at the time because Kimi completely scripts what he's going to do here. Goes to the inside nice and early. You think this should be a really easy one for George to defend, as he has done before. But he leaves it late. And then when he does come, he doesn't go all the way to the inside of the road. So Kimi still has this opportunity to dive down the inside and make the pass that he couldn't when George defended it earlier on. Now, I think at this stage, George reckons that Kimi has got a little bit of an overlap on him because at this stage, George could still cover off the absolute inside of the road. It would be aggressive, but it would be okay because there's no overlap here for Kimi, and he saw it coming a bit of a time ago. So you see George get to this and then hold it with a car's width. And I've been in that position as well. When you're at high speed, trying to judge if a car's right there with an overlap or right there without an overlap is really difficult in your mirrors. So George gives the space. Remember in Canada when they were fighting, there was no quarter given and he almost put Kimi onto the grass. I think he's worried about doing the same again if he goes all the way over to the inside. Eventually, Kimi then does get the overlap on the inside. They go wheel to wheel through a few corners, but the damage is done. And Antonelli's through for what should be a 71-point lead over Russell in the championship. Only heartbreak for him the next lap. And it opens the door both for Russell and for Lewis Hamilton.
I feel a bit empty, to be fair, right now. But it's what it is. Races are like this, and it comes and goes. And yeah, I mean, for sure the pace was good today.
Outside, the pace looked strong at the beginning. I felt under control, comfortable in the first 10, 15 laps, and then just struggled on the hard tyre. But a bit of a day, I'm glad to be back on the podium.
I've been hoping and praying for this moment and working towards it really hard with the team, and just such great dedication from everybody. I can't believe can't believe getting my first Grand Prix win here in Barcelona. It's such a privileged position to be in, and something I really will never forget.